first thing was never sight. It was the hum under stone, quiet as breath, waiting before I even sat down. The air carried dust and cold and the smell of wet rock. A faint iron taste settled on the tongue, like a coin held too long. I never told anyone I could taste it. I just signed the log, marked the hours, ate my bread, drank my water, and sat in the dark. That is what they asked of me: to sit, to breathe, to be present. They said the chamber was sealed for preservation. That is what the brochure says in daylight. Tourists pass, take a photo of the tower, and keep walking. They never look twice at the door set into shadow. At night, the place belongs only to me. My boots echo on the spiral stair. My hand finds the cold rail. The air gets denser with each turn. Every step feels borrowed. They call it the bell chamber. Only there is no bell. There is a square of stone in the middle of the room, like a lid that does not lift. There is a chair. There's a desk. There's a little lamp I keep turned low to save the wick. And there's the rule of silence that hangs over everything like dust. When I first came, I tried to pray every hour. In time, I learned to let my breath be the prayer. I'm a former guard. I did my service where orders were orders and steel was steel. The Vatican took my file and gave me a new post. They promised steady work, a room, and quiet. I accepted. Quiet can be a wage. My name is Silas. I keep the night for them now. The first year was almost easy. Long nights, no sound but my breath, no company but the lamp in the stone. Sometimes I thought I heard water far below, but it was the tower cooling after the heat. That is what I told myself. You learn to tell yourself useful things when the world is made of silence. It changed in the second year. I was in the chair, hands folded, half asleep. Then it came. A low hum rose through the floor. Not loud, not sharp. It was steady. It pressed against my boots, my knees, my chest. A rhythm, slow and patient, like a heart under the stone. It throbbed against my teeth and the roots of my tongue. I stood without meaning to. My pulse climbed to meet it. I reported it to Commander Hale at dawn. His office smelled of leather and old paper. He read my note, then looked at me as if a door had clicked shut somewhere far away. He did not ask for details. He did not look concerned. He only said, "Then it knows you now." The words felt like a stamp on wax. The meeting ended with that. That evening, Father Owen met me in the corridor. He is younger than most, hair dark, fingers pale. He carried a small brass plate wrapped in cloth. He did not smile. He did not raise his voice. He set the plate in my hands and told me to read. 5 lines were etched into the metal, the letters black and rough, like they had been burned in rather than cut. 1. Never leave your post when the bell hums. 2. Never try to silence the sound. 3. If it speaks your name, do not answer. 4. If the bell stops before dawn, perform the humility protocol. 5. Never go below the first stair. I asked the only question that mattered. What is the humility protocol? He pulled the cloth back over the plate. His eyes did not blink. Pray you never find out. Then he turned and walked away. The corridor swallowed his steps. I stood there holding the weight of those 5 lines like a small door I could not open. From that night on, the hum was not an interruption. It was part of the air. Some nights it came faint, a suggestion on the edge of hearing. Other nights it swelled until the lamp trembled and the chair creaked under me. I learned to breathe with it, to count my pulse against its rhythm, to let its wave move through the bones without pushing back. I stopped asking what it meant. Meaning is a luxury when your task is to endure. Lucas joined in my 3rd year. He had quick hands and a boy's need to fill the silence. His boots made too much noise on the stair. He tried to make jokes the first week. The chamber did not laugh. The chamber stripped every sentence down to breath and grit. After a while, he copied my posture, my quiet, my habit of checking the square in the floor with my eyes but not with my feet. One night he leaned toward me, voice low. What is the humility protocol? I gave him Owen's answer. Pray you never find out. He let out a short laugh that was not laughter. We listened as the hum rose from below, deep and slow, a tide under stone. He did not ask again. The plate stayed in my pocket like a coin that could buy nothing. Days blurred, food lost taste. Sleep came in thin pieces that slid off the bones. My skin cooled as if the chamber and I were matching temperatures. The hum followed me through the corridors, into the tiny room where I kept my cot, through the gate where a novice checked my badge. When I closed my eyes, the sound waited. When I opened them, it had already begun. Because this is the part people never understand. The hum is not the event. It is the environment. It is the weather of this place. It does not arrive. It abides, and when it abides long enough, it starts to arrange the living around it. Your breath falls into step. Your pulse shifts cadence. Your nights move closer to its hinge. That is when you stop thinking of it as outside you. That is when you realize the rules are not for the chamber. They are for your own mouth and feet and will. I polished the lamp glass with a rough cloth. I oiled the hinge of the desk drawer. I checked the log and the seals and the tiny leaded box that sat inside the safe. The box is heavy and dull, with a seam that looks like it was poured shut. I did not open it. I was not allowed. But I knew it was there for the night the hum would change. The fourth rule points to nights that do not belong to the others. Hale inspected the post every few months. He would stand in the doorway, hands behind his back, and say nothing for a long time. Then he would nod once and leave. He did not touch the square in the floor. He did not touch the plate of rules. He knew what not to touch. Men who have learned a place by losing to it once do not touch it twice. Father Owen spoke rarely. When he did, it was practical. He told me to drink more water. He told me to step outside at dawn and stand in the sun for 5 minutes. He told me, name only what you must. He did not bless the room. He did not carry a book. His silence was not empty. It was work. I began to mark the hum like a sailor marks the sea. There were nights when it dragged, nights when it quickened, nights when it paused long enough to make the ear strain into the gap. The pause was the worst. In that half-second, the world lifted, and every nerve bent forward to meet the nothing. I could feel my body want to answer, to make a sound to bridge it. I kept my mouth closed and let the gap pass. That is when the whispers started. Not words, not really. More like the shape of words in a throat, air moving as if it almost knew my name. I did not answer. The third rule sat in my pocket and heated the cloth. The whispers slowed. They were patient. So was I. One dawn, I caught Lucas looking at the square in the floor. He was counting under his breath. He stopped when he realized I was watching. He looked away and tightened his jaw. He had started to feel it as well. The hum is not a secret you can keep to yourself. It gets into the people who share your air. He asked me very quietly, "Do you ever dream of it?" "I dream of the stair," I said. "I never reached the first step." He nodded and did not ask more. I did not tell him that in my dream something waits at the landing, not above, not below, but inside the angle where shadow holds its breath. I did not tell him that sometimes I wake with my hand half raised, as if to ring a bell that is not there. By then the chamber had tuned my days. I moved like the lamp flame moves when a door opens in another room. Small sway, small correction, always returning to center. I kept the watch, I kept the breath, I kept the rules, and the hum kept me. The night it failed did not come with thunder or wind. The room simply let go of its breath. The hum slipped mid-beat and fell silent, like a hand leaving my shoulder. I sat still and counted to 10. Nothing answered. The lamp ticked as the oil settled. I pulled the plate from my coat and ran a finger down the rules. The fourth line lifted like a thorn. If the bell stops before dawn, perform the humility protocol. Now they had weight. I stood. My knees felt unsure, as if the floor had taken a step without me. The safe key turned slow. I lifted the lead box and set it on the desk. I broke the seal with my thumb. Inside lay three things: a silver knife, a folded blank page, and a small handbell the color of charcoal, its handle worn smooth by hands I would never meet. The air around it felt colder, as if the bell were drinking heat. I did not call for Lucas. I lifted the handbell and felt the weight settle into my palm. I gave it one small shake. The note was thin and quick. The floor answered at once. A strike rose from the stone below, perfect in tone, not in timing. It came on the offbeat, as if two hearts had agreed to disagree. The sound met in my bones and made a cross of pain inside my chest. Breath followed from under the stone, not mine. It dragged in, rough and wet, and let go with a grit that tasted like ash. Then a voice came through the gap where the hum should have been, low and close. You kept it ringing too long. I held air in my throat until the chest hurt. The third rule burned in my pocket. If it speaks your name, do not answer. It had not used my name. I set the bell back in the box, shut the lid, and stood with my hands at my sides like a child being measured for a coat he does not want. Dawn came like a pale lid pulling open. The hum returned by degrees until the floor felt real again. I wrote one word in the log. Stopped. I left it there. The box went back into the safe. The silence left behind a ring that my ears would not stop chasing. Commander Hale arrived before noon. He filled the doorway with his shoulders and with something older than habit. I gave him the facts without heat. He did not ask for color. Did you open it? He said. Did you ring it? I said yes to both. He looked past me to the floor, not with fear, but with the respect a man has for a tool that ruined him once. He nodded and left. When he returned, another man walked behind him with a canvas case, Dr. Grant. He set a small receiver to the stone and watched a needle under glass. At dusk, the hum rose, sure as tide. The needle jumped. He said, "It isn't vibration, it's communication. Something is talking through the metal." Hale kept his hands behind his back and stared at the square in the floor. He told the story in a voice that did not ask to be believed. 17th century, 13 priests locked below for heresy. They built something, said it could wake God himself. Rome sent men to tear it down. The stone broke their tools. The air killed their torches. So they sealed it, built the chapel above it like a lid. "We keep the lid," he said. Grant added that prayers do not change pitch, but this one does. Hale ignored him. He said only that if I had heard it breathe, it knew my breath now. The words felt like a verdict in a room with no door. Not chosen. Kept. Grant stayed 3 nights. He drew the room, measured the delay between the bell's note and the answer from below, and mapped the hum as if it were weather. On the 4th morning, he packed his case. Before he left, he said, "If it can answer, it can be asked." I did not ask anything. The chamber already had enough of me. When the lamp ran low, I sat in the dark and let my breath settle. I counted in my head and put my pulse against the hum. The 5th rule flickered at the edge of thought: never go below the first stair. My mind kept placing my foot there, on the step that was not mine. In the quiet hours, I heard the shape of speech without the sound of it, breath forming a name and then swallowing it. The room tightened as if waiting for me to answer. I did not. The 3rd rule warmed my pocket like a coal. Lucas watched me with the look of someone learning a fear by copy. He opened his mouth and then closed it. After a while, he whispered, "Is it worse now?" "It knows I'm here," I said. "That's enough." On the 2nd night, the hum rose and fell in a pattern that was not ours. It dropped out for half a breath, came back sharp, then laid flat and slow again. For a moment, it and I moved together. Then it refused me. I stayed still and let it choose. My jaw clicked. My mouth stayed closed. I tried to sleep in the small hours, but the chair held me upright like a hand on the back of my neck. Each time I closed my eyes, I saw the handbell in the lead box. When I opened them, the lamp threw a halo on the desk that never warmed. The air tasted like copper. At dawn, Hale returned with a ledger I had not seen. Names filled the pages in a script that shifted with each hand. Next to each name was a date, and next to each date a mark. Some had a cross, some a circle, some nothing. He closed it and set it aside. "Keep the rules," he said. "The chamber keeps the rest." Grant sent a note through Owen that evening. A single line in a narrow hand. "If the pitch locks to your pulse, step outside for 3 minutes. Practical. Cold. Not a prayer." I folded the note and kept it with the plate. I did not step outside. The rule said never leave your post when the bell hums. It hummed. I kept my post. The hum is not a visitor. It is the climate. You do not stop weather. You do not argue tide. You learn where to stand and how to breathe. Grant looked for signal. Hale listened for prayer. I sat between them with the chair under me, the square in front of me, and the rules in my pocket like a map to a country that never changes. The third night, a word almost formed. The first half of my name rose in the air and then died. My mouth watered as if I were about to speak. I swallowed. The urge passed with a small ache from tongue to ear. I let the ache stand. I did not bridge the silence. Grant came one last time at dusk and asked to stand alone in the dark. I said no. He said, "Ask it something small." I said, "No." He stared at the floor. "Then it will keep asking you." I looked at the square where the stair waits under stone. It already does. When he left, the chamber felt larger, or I had shrunk. I checked the lamp, the seals, the safe. I ran my fingers across the plate and let the letters catch the ridges of my skin. I thought about the story Hale told. 13 priests with a device to wake God. Maybe they did. Maybe they only woke the room. If a prayer lasts long enough, it becomes a machine. If a machine lasts long enough, men kneel in front of it. The line between them thins until you cannot see where faith ends and metal begins. Close to morning, the hum swelled and then settled, like a chest learning a slower breath. A draft rose from the seam where the square meets the floor. It smelled like stone kept in a pocket. I leaned forward, but did not rise. The rule against the first stair is not advice. It is a hand on the back of your belt. I stayed seated and counted down. When the bell in the safe sleeps, I can almost forget the handbell exists. When it wakes in my mind, I feel its weight in the bones. The box is part of the furniture now, a thought stored on a shelf. I told myself I would not open it again. I told myself many things. The chamber heard none of them. It has its own schedule. It will call for the bell or for my breath or for both at once when it wishes. I keep the watch. I keep the rules. I keep the night so the hum can keep the world that sits above it. I began to notice the small thefts first. Seconds vanished, then minutes. My breath learned a slower step. When I stood, the room tilted. My hands cooled. Food turned to paper, water to metal. I did not say sick. I said tuned. The chamber was tuning me. By midweek, my pulse often matched the floor. I felt it before the lamp took the wick. I felt it walking the corridor, 3 turns from the door. A flag planted itself inside my ribs. Numbers floated on the surface when I counted. The hum moved under. Sister Mara came with a tin tray, white shoes, steady steps, hands like cool cloth. She checked my eyes with a penlight. She waited, then asked about sleep. "Enough," I said. She answered for me. "Not enough. You're sinking with it." She gave me salt water. It burned the tongue and steadied the stomach. She said if my breath copied the pitch, I should count aloud and force a mismatch. She wrote a note and slid it into my coat. "Keep this with the plate. I read it after she left. Keep posture upright. Keep hands warm. Count when the gap lengthens. Speak only to the living. I folded it with the rules and kept it close. Naming things let me stand beside them, not inside them. Brother Isaac handled the logs that month. Light steps, numbers whispered under breath. He came up the stair on my third night without sleep. He stared at the square of floor a moment too long and asked if I ever heard it say my name. No, I told him. He looked relieved, then afraid of it. He set the ledger down and left. His lips kept moving. Night makes questions louder. The next evening, he did not arrive. A novice brought the forms instead. He said Brother Isaac was delayed. In the morning, they began to use a soft word. Misplaced, not missing. Misplaced walks with lighter shoes. Mara found me standing too still. She told me to eat. I could not. She watched and said nothing. Then she lowered her voice. She said he told her it had said his name, twice, once to her, once to himself. I asked if she reported it. She said she marked the time because marking is safer than reporting. She touched my wrist for 2 counts. She told me to count on the out-breath and keep my hands warm. Then she left. The night lengthened. The hum deepened. The world split into 2 layers, one above for others, one below for me. My breath moved between them. I told myself I was being used, not taken. Owen and Hale stood in the doorway the next day, faces flat, eyes old. Owen said no one had seen Isaac. He waited. I shook my head. Hale watched my hands. He reads a man by what he forgets to control. Later, I found a line in the log in another hand. Do not answer. I traced it with a dull pencil. The rule was mine already. But the room knows where to place a warning, so you cannot pretend it is someone else's. Sleep broke. I woke to the ghost of my name at the edge of air, not spoken, shaped. A mouth formed it on the other side of stone and swallowed it whole. I stayed quiet. I counted. I added my own noises to the air, a cough, a scrape of chair, a number out loud. Cheap, useful defenses. Mara returned with hot water and a bag that smelled of salt and herbs. For the hands, she said, warmth makes you harder to copy. She studied my eyes and told me I was carrying the room with me when I looked away. I know, I said. She told me it would ask to be named and not to give it that. She warned that when the pause comes, I must not fill it. She left the bag. 2 more nights passed without Isaac. Mercy here means silence. I practiced mercy by not picturing him on the stair. Near dawn, the hum stopped for one long breath. My lungs wanted to mirror it. I forced a mismatch and counted. Heat pressed behind my teeth. I swallowed iron. Then the sound returned slow, as if the wheel had found its old setting. Mara brought a folder tied with string. She said to read it here, not take it out. Inside were photographs on thick paper. Men in uniforms like mine, faces fixed, eyes down, frost at their mouths. Reports said the same words. Standing at post, non-responsive, cause unknown. A sketch of this room sat at the bottom. The square was smaller then, the chair closer. A margin note said, move the chair back 2 feet. Another said lamp to the left. Furniture shifted so the next man might last. A typed line shook on the page. Bell stops when keeper expires. Restart only on new assignment. Mara did not explain. She watched my hands. I said they stand. She said they stand, they do not fall. They fix on the seam and wait for a sound that will not need them. Then she told me the bell does not ring to hold something in. It rings because someone is still here to hear it. The room drew a new outline. Far things came close. Near things stepped back. If the bell depends on the living pay. If the hum needs a keeper, the hum chooses. Mara watched me see it. She did not comfort me. I asked who told her to show me this. She said no one. If I was the one it wanted, I should know the shape of the wanting. She retied the folder and told me to drink water, walk in sunlight, and keep my hands warm. After she left the room, felt like a mouth learning a new word. Outside, the other tower rang for the city. Ours kept its own count. I sat straight with my palms on the arms of the chair. The wood felt gritty. Lucas came at change of watch. He saw my face and set his pack down without sound. He said I looked thinner. "I am tuned," I said. He stood near me and let the hum settle into him. He asked whose name it needed now. "Mine," I said, "until it learns another." He swallowed and said we should not let it learn. The hum bent his breath and stilled him. I gave him Mara's bag of salts. I told him to keep his hands warm. He asked what to do if it spoke his name. "Nothing," I said. "Let it carry its own voice." That night the room slipped sideways when I rose too fast. I gripped the chair. My breath kept time with the hum. I forced a mismatch and counted. I thought of those photographs. Duty and capture look the same when a body stands forever. Mara came with fresh water and her small watch. She felt my wrist and watched the second hand. She said my rate was slow, not dangerous yet, but slow. She underlined warm. Then she asked what I did when it spoke. "Nothing," I said. She said good. She warned that if it told me to come closer, I must not move. The pull feels like obedience. It is the first stair. After she left, I tried to pray in the old way, with words that point up. The room bent them sideways and laid them into the seam. I let them go and kept the breath. Some nights, that choice is the only proof I am here. Later, a package came with my name in Owen's careful hand. 3 reports. Same story. Standing, non-responsive. Eyes down. No struggle. Bell resumed on transfer. The last margin read, "Keeper replaced within the hour." I warmed the pages under the lamp, as if heat could change them. The lamp fluttered when my breath fell in step with the hum. The flame leaned. I moved it left as the sketch advised. The shadow line shifted. The room became new for a moment, then itself again. Small moves matter. They pushed the moment away from the stair. Near midnight, the hum rose in my chest before the floor. That was new. I wrote it down. The pencil shook. I set it aside. The urge to answer lived in my hands, not my mouth. I let the wood take it. Because no file says the part that matters. The bell does not hold a monster below. The bell keeps a person above. It sounds because someone is standing. When the breath stops, it stops. When the next breath begins, it starts. The room is not a cage. It is a bargain written in rhythm. Bargains want payment. The folder did not say what happens when the bargain is signed. The photographs did. The hum did. I felt it right on my ribs. I slept 2 hours and woke with my teeth pressed, numbness in the jaw. I thought of Isaac and gave him a bright hallway in my mind with a light at the end. I gave him motion. I did not give him the stair. When the city bell rang, Owen stood in the doorway. He looked at my hands and face. He said I was still here. "For now," I said. He placed a candle on the desk and left. Ceremonies feed the room. He knows that. I lit the candle. A small pool of light formed on the wood. I kept the watch. I kept the breath. I kept the rules. Evening bent in. The hum found me again, steady as tide, patient as a clerk. It had my name ready in the shape of air. I did not give it sound, not that night, not yet. This time it was not a pause, not a breath. It was absence itself. The hum did not stumble. It vanished. The room gave me nothing, no rise in pitch, no echo I could count against. Only stone learning silence. I waited for the return. It did not come. The plate in my pocket felt heavier by a fraction. The 4th rule burned the skin. If the bell stops before dawn, perform the humility protocol. I had learned the shape of those words without meaning. I waited 1 more count of 10 and said, "If there is any other way, show it." The room offered none. The seam breathed again. I said, "Then I will go." My voice had the tired edge of a tool kept past its hour. The air did not argue. The seam in the floor breathed. A draft climbed through stone and tasted of wet iron. A hairline arc of black appeared around the square. The square dropped, slow. It sank as if surrendering. I felt cold rise from the opening. I did not call for help. The rule against the first stair lit in my mind like a flare. Never go below the first stair. The line reached my boots. I kept them planted. I said, "Hold." The word landed dull and went no farther. The opening widened. A spiral of stone revealed itself, old and damp, with edges rubbed smooth by feet that were not mine. The hum did not return. In the center of the room I heard a heart. It was not mine. Slow, deliberate beats rose from below, each one catching in the ear the way a latch catches. Lucas's name crossed my mind and left quickly. Mara's note said, "Speak only to the living." I did not test the rule. I took the lamp in my left hand and the plate of rules in my right. I did not take the handbell. The safe looked like a closed eye. I leaned over the stair and let the lamplight fall. The steps spiraled to the left. Bone learning stone, stone learning breath. I bent, then stopped. I stood straight and breathed once off its beat. Then I went down. Each step found me with a small shock, like cold metal at the wrist. The air tightened as I sank. My mouth tasted like old coin. I kept the plate against my ribs so I could feel the rules press when the breath thinned. The first figure appeared at a turn. He stood in a small alcove, facing the center of the coil, as if guarding a door that did not exist. His eyes were open. His mouth had fallen open a finger's width, the lips dried to a stone line. The skin was not skin. It had the mat of bone and the stubborn set of rock. I raised the lamp and spoke a number without meaning to. The number felt like a courtesy. I said, "I'm sorry," to a man who could not hear. I went lower. Another figure waited 2 turns down. The same, upright, eyes fixed, mouth ajar, as if a last word had stood there long enough to become load-bearing. His hands rested on the rail, not to steady himself, but as if to feel what moved in the stone. There were 12 by the time the stair opened onto a ring of stone. The 12 stood around the edge at equal distances, each facing inward, each in a posture that had been learned by those above without knowing it. I walked past them with my lamp high and could not give them names. They were men, and they were not men. I said, "Keep the rules," though rules meant nothing here. In the center hung the bell. It was not metal. It was pale as a throat bone. It had a seam like the seam of a skull and a curve like the inside of a rib. It was a braid of something once alive. The bell beat without moving. It beat. No swing, no strike. A pressure rose and fell. My ear took a sound. Each beat arranged my breath as if it had the right to decide how I would live inside my chest. A voice spoke in that place. The voice was mine, but older. It came from the center, from the bell, from the seam, where bone learns to be metal in the dark. "You took too long," it said. "It needs a voice again." I didn't move at first. The rule about names still lived in my pocket. It had not said mine. It had used my voice to talk to me. That is a different rule. I waited for the floor to choose me or release me. It did neither. I looked at the 12 again. The mouths made no sound. The lips moved a measure on the beat, as if repeating a line that the air could not afford to carry. The eyes did not see me. They saw inward. They saw the seam. The thought came clean and without pain. The bell does not contain what is below. It contains what stands above. The lamp shook once, then steadied. I set it on the ring. I set the plate beside it. It was easy, like rest. I said, "I kept the rules." I thought of Owen's face when he had said I was still here. I thought of Mara's hands, cool on the wrist. I thought of Lucas, who had asked what to do if it spoke his name. I had told him to do nothing. I understood that nothing can be a shape you climb into. The humility protocol announced itself in the body. No instruction on paper, no sacrament, knees that bend. A neck that lowers, a chest that stops arguing with the room, a man that agrees to be a mouth. I did not say those words. I heard Mara once more, "Do not fill the pause." I stepped into the center and faced the bell. The bone had a fine grain like unglazed porcelain. My hand lifted and lowered. I whispered, "I'm here." The breath went out and did not return on its own. I had to go find it. The voice came again, mine, but nearer. It needs a voice again. The clapper did not move. The pressure rose. I felt a door in the head open where a door should not be. I stepped until the wind and I were in the same space. I could say I chose. I could say I obeyed. Both are true from different floors. I opened my mouth and let the air claim it. The bell did not strike. The bell received. The beat fell into me and found the old path. The path widened. Something weary let go, and something patient took hold. The room bent around a new hinge that had my ribs in it. From far above, a thin line of morning found the stair. The 12 did not move. The bell did not move. Only the measure changed within me. My name became a shape without sound. It fit into the beat and disappeared there like salt in water. When I breathed again, the breath belonged to the task. It was a simple breath and a single task. Keep and answer. I felt the chair upstairs as if it were a second mouth. It would be empty now. The page in the log would be simple. Above, everything was ordinary. The city bells ran their hour. The novitiate washed a corridor. A cart brought bread. In our corridor, Father Owen wrote a line in a colder hand. Containment restored. Subject Silas unresponsive. Commander Hale signed below it. He stood at the door and listened until the world belonged to itself again. He put the ledger away. Sister Mara cleaned the desk and set the lamp right. In the hall, she told Owen, he kept the rules. Lucas received his assignment. Owen handed him the plate. The metal looked heavy in his open palm. The rules fit his pocket. He walked the corridor with a step steadier than his age owed him. When he reached the door, he paused and put his hand against the wood. Owen said, "If it speaks your name," and Lucas said, "I'll keep quiet." I cannot say what I looked like. Men above decided I was unresponsive. That word is a fine word for a mouth that has offered itself to another task. It keeps clean what is best kept clean. Night returned. A boy became a watchman again. The room that had been mine tested the weight of the new breath. It finds the step a man will keep when he has forgotten he is stepping. At the first deep hour, the hum shifted its gait. The room spoke through the stone, the way a hand through cloth can still touch. "Lucas," it said. The name was gentle, a coin on a table. The boy stood, I think. He stood and he did not answer. He said, "I won't." The third rule warmed his pocket. I said, "Keep me small." Above the tower, the sky kept its weather. The room kept its measure. The city kept its hour. The tape plays softer than I remember. The hiss comes first, a bed of air that has weight. Then my voice, not the voice I carry in my throat, but the one pressed flat in magnetic lines. It comes through the speaker as if from under stone. Maybe I never left. Maybe I became the sound. A pause follows. The pause is long enough to count a dozen heartbeats. Long enough for the room to bend in and listen. I hear myself breathe. The breath drags like someone carrying water uphill. Then another line comes. If grace still listens. I kept the rules. I never opened the wrong door. The sentence falls apart at the edges like paper left in rain. The tape hisses louder and then softer. For a moment it sounds less like a machine and more like a chest that cannot decide if it wants to rise again. The bell answers in the far distance, not a clean strike. A low roll that thickens the air, it slides between walls and through ribs. The note wavers as if it is looking for a place to stay. The room does not brighten, it does not darken, it holds. My voice and the bell mix in the middle until you cannot tell which one follows which. I hear the log turn. A hand writes in it. The pen lifts and sets down again. I see the lines without eyes. Stopped, resumed, subject unresponsive. The words are stone laid on a grave without soil. Above the tower, the city moves as if no ledger exists. A cart turns the corner. A market opens a door. A child calls for his mother. None of it breaks the measure below. I listen harder. I tell myself it is only a machine. I tell myself machines do not care for prayer. The hum grows faint, then strong, then faint again, like tide. Tide that has no ocean. Tide that lives in stone. There is a moment where the bell seems to shrink until it is only the size of a lung. Then it swells until it could be the size of the world. I lose track of which one is true. Both fit, both hurt. The tape ends without a click. It just fades into air. I wait for silence. Silence does not come. The hiss stays. The hiss has become the breath. Someone else is standing above now. His boots know the seam. His hands hold the plate with the 5 rules. He has read them. He has folded them into his coat. He waits for the hum to know his breath. The bell lengthens a beat as if savoring the first taste of a new rhythm. Then it does what it has always done. It calls. The name is quiet, almost shy. A coin rolled on stone. Lucas. He holds his silence like a shield. The rule in his pocket warms like a coal. If it speaks your name, do not answer. He obeys, but the hum remembers. The hum always remembers. It keeps the breath it is given. It keeps the pause. It keeps the night. I am not certain if the voice on the tape is finished. I am not certain if I am finished. I hear the bell and I hear myself, and I cannot swear they are different. The sound lingers in the ribs like a slow prayer. Not holy, not profane, only steady. I tell myself one last thing. If anyone listens close enough, maybe they will hear it between the beats. I say, keep me small. The bell carries it away.